In 2002, George Gregan lifted the Bledisloe Cup to celebrate 5 straight years of winning the trophy. Having been a competitive trophy for much of its history, the Bledisloe had been on one side of the ditch for a rather long period of time. A few Kiwis therefore got together and decided to make the Aussie head coach, Eddie Jones, pay big time. With Jones now back in charge of the Wallabies for the first time since 2005, the All Blacks are still yet to hand it back to Jones as they celebrate the Australian drought's legal drinking age. Despite these factors, I think the first half of the first test gave us the best Wallaby defensive display in over a decade. This is while they backed up their grasp of controlling a first half again in the second test. The two tests had a varying final margin, but Australia ultimately lost due to the same reason on both occasions: their discipline. So how did the All Blacks ruthlessly punish these Australian mistakes to win the Rugby Championship? And did the second test give the All Blacks anything to worry about ahead of the World Cup? My name's Max, I'm the host over here at the Black Jersey, and let's answer all of these questions in today's video. The opening try was, let's just say, a great case of opportunism that has somewhat defined the Ian Foster era. The opportunism, though, shows that Scott Barrett has done his homework on the Aussie line-out. The very second that Jed Holloway begins passing to Tate McDermott, Scott Barrett and Shannon Frizzell both see Carter Gordon as the open side kicking option, as well as Marika Koroibete on the blind side, though he's out of frame. Although Koroibete is loved for his activity with ball in hand, he simply isn't known for being the best option off the boot, meaning Tate McDermott only ever has the instinct to make this pass to Gordon that will be kicked away. The use of Will Skelton, the man at the back of the line-out, as the furthest back lifter, now allows for Barrett and Frizzell to charge forward without any blocking mechanism, hence why they can apply pressure to McDermott. There's no grand strategy to scoring here. Barrett just simply makes a massive hit that sees a spilled ball which Frizzell can score off just padding onto the ground. Picking a young 9-10 axis was only ever going to go one of two ways, and by scoring this try, Frizzell ensures that those inexperienced members of the Australian spine will fear their role as enforcers for the All Blacks. Although the full-time score in Melbourne means you probably won't believe what I'm saying, the Wallabies actually led the scoreline for most of the first half. What we get for the next try, though, is excellent refereeing from Wayne Barnes. As Valentini grounds the ball after a tight carry, Barnes is at this angle here, meaning he clearly can't see the ball, thanks to Skelton and Savia being in this line of view over here. Barnes has a look around the side but can't see the ball, so does the right thing. It allows the Wallabies to play on before checking the grounding. Although the TMO rules the try, Barnes' call to play on gives Rieko Ioane the opportunity to make an absolute mockery of the calls to move him back to wing. While this opinion I've got here won't be changing before the World Cup, I'm going to keep showing Rieko Ioane's defence off as much as I can. Not only does he shoot up from the try line to take down Samu Karevi, allowing Ethan de Groot to form a ruck, but Ioane now spots Callaway and Koroibete ready to strike as the arrows show us while he's getting to his feet. We show Ioane getting into position, while the nearest option who can help him out is Tyrell Lomax due to Aaron Smith's sweeper roll. Ioane has to therefore watch Tate McDermott as this next arrow shows us to know where the ball is going. Andrew Callaway takes the ball and looks to make a short pass to Koroibete, so Ioane should, in any normal world, be the last line of defence. Ioane, however, reads the movement of Callaway's arms again, trusting Smith to make the tackle we can see in this animation should Callaway throw the dummy. Ioane shifts out one more spot to take Koroibete into touch. Although it turns out Valentini has indeed scored the try, such an absolute masterclass by Ioane likely makes it feel that the Wallabies aren't actually winning the game despite the scoreline. This try for driving maul to Taylor in the 34th minute therefore drives a bigger wedge into the Wallabies psyche than a stake into Dracula, given how hard it actually was for them to score any points at all. As for the third and final try of the first half, we can see the pieces that allowed for Will Jordan's score settling well in advance. Tyrell Lomax's run here is just your run-of-the-mill standard carry from a tight 5 forward, but while he does this, we can already see Geordie Barrett and Rieko Ioane standing together while Richie Mo'unga is directly behind them while the ruck is about to form. Jordan Petaya's reaction reaction is to call for reinforcements from Bell and Frost over here. Mo'unga though is one step ahead, totally out of view thanks to Koroibete heading back to get onside. While Koroibete moves to his onside position, Scott Barrett and Shannon Frizzell wrap around to push Barrett and Ioane towards the wing. Because of these two forwards coming along as extra bodies, Bataya's reinforcements now come from Samu Karevi and Will Skelton's exit from the breakdown. Smith releases the ball from the ruck to have a pot of Barrett and Frizzell on his outside, while Barrett and Ioane go to the right of Frizzell. Gordon, Koroibete and Bataya sprint up, go all in on the midfielders, but Mo'unga and Bowden Barrett are now given the opportunity to make a second wrap around here to take advantage of Gordon's inexperience, as well as Koroibete's absolute horror show of a defensive positioning. When Mo'unga takes the ball from Geordie, an artificial 3-on-1 is being created. This new overlap leaves Gordon marking Mo'unga and Callaway coming into frame, having to choose between continuing to mark Bodie or shifting out to Jordan, the eventual try scorer, who is on the wing. We haven't seen this precise pattern from the All Blacks before, but it's awfully similar to the loop that allowed for Damien McKenzie to break the line against Los Pumas. The first two NZ tries may come from some good luck, but this one was pretty well worked, now that's for sure. We'll now take our first ad break before we examine the second half of the first test. Straight after a line out, the second half starts to become very one-sided thanks to the Wallabies' loss of their discipline. Because of this momentum, a try I briefly went over in my previous analysis video gets scored. We'll start the breakdown by just taking the time to appreciate this genius from Aaron Smith. Frizzell makes the carry as the middle option of a three-man pod with Papali'i and Scott Barrett in the perfect formation behind him. The man who has to tackle Frizzell ends up being Mark Nawangani-Tawasi, who can get to his feet relatively quick. With such immense ruck speed from Papali'i and Barrett, however, Smith has already got his hands to the ball as Nawangani-Tawasi gets to his feet. Because he is turning around, Nawangani-Tawasi can't guard the space that Caleb Clark is looking at, and Aaron Smith is an absolute genius, charging straight at the player who isn't looking, Jordan Uelese. By charging straight to Nawangani-Tawasi, Smith has now given Uelese no other choice but to make the tackle from offside in order to save the try. If Uelese makes this tackle, it's a driving maul in the corner. If he obeys the offside line and he doesn't make this tackle, then Nick White is in a 2-on-1 that could allow either option to score. The smartest thing from Smith though is his knowledge that Clark has been selected to provide an extra ruck clearance in the wide channels, as he has done many a time. As I said in my previous analysis video, Clark steps over Smith and he lands to form the breakdown and play resumes as normal. As the All Blacks gain an advantage for the offside via Uelese's tackle, Clark now spots this hole when he gets to his feet. He perfectly targets the gap between Valentini and the breakdown, with Laulala available to push him over. Clark gets forward with his first touch of the match, hopefully shutting his haters up. There's nothing pre-planned here. This is all just a case of extreme presence of mind from experienced players, including Caleb Clark. We can now get on to celebrating Cam Roigard's test debut, as well as another piece of breakdown brilliance from the All Blacks. Scott Barrett, fresh off posing for his new album cover, is combining with Sam Whitelock to get Ardie Savia a few metres in contact, with James Slipper, Jordan Pataya and Samu Karevi all there to support the tackler whose jersey number I can't see. As we feel the warm, fuzzy, wholesome mood of seeing Roigard arrive at the breakdown, we also see another warm, fuzzy feeling of the Wallabies defence being well behind where it needs to be. Frost, Arnold and Valentini are all tracking towards the blind side so that Pataya and Koroibete can get to the wing. Arnold will most likely stand here to mark Samisoni Taukei'aho once his shift ends. Barrett, however, says not today, boys. He holds on to Karevi and delays the clean out of the ruck to punish Frost and Co for not being in position quick enough, with the slight rub of Frost's elbow on Karevi forced by Barrett's clean out, now crowding the space around these shifting Wallabies who just now look like a bunch of confused Joeys. Barrett's delayed clean out of Karevi now sees Frost marking Taukei'aho rather than Arnold, who is still on the open side. This nice work from Barrett now allows Roigard to distribute for Ioane, who carries to suck Koroibete in. This play all concludes at the next phase with the ball going to Jordan, who Koroibete is now facing from side on. Koroibete's side on position gives Jordan the chance to step, draw in Cooper and Callaway in Australia down to 14. They're now giving Jordan the rights to deliver this perler of an offload to Mark Talia, a man who definitely deserved a try after this one was initially disallowed. The final try of of the first test is a perfect example of adapting a systematic approach to what's in front of you. A three-man pod of Samisoni Taukei'aho, flanked by Luke Jacobson and Dalton Papali'i, suck in the Wallaby defenders before Richie Mo'unga receives the ball from Taukei'aho while hiding in the back. After Mo'unga uses Ofatu'ungafasi as a decoy runner, he then moves the ball on to Jordan. We can see that the All Blacks have worked to manufacture what will be a 4-on-3 based on whether Cooper comes up. The game plan is for Jordan to select between these three carriers on his left, so that the three carriers, Leonard Brown, Barrett and Clark, can work together to create indecision between the defenders and work a move like the one we can see animated on the screen. Jordan is, however, a little bit further ahead from Barrett, so has to run sideways due to Jed Holloway reading the play. Because Jordan is so unbelievably quick, the other players simply just can't keep up with the sudden need to override the game plan. Jordan, however, sucks the two defenders, Holloway and Petaia, in. Jordan then passes to Barrett, who he trusts to run the right line. Although there may or may not be an obstruction on James Slipper, Nick White alters his line so that it no longer becomes an obstruction and allows Barrett to break the line. Although Leonard Brown and Clark received the ball further ahead than they intended, marched by more defenders, we get some great work to see them inside the Australian 22 while Papali'i cleans the ruck formed around Leonard Brown. Now that the pre-planned method of entering the opposition half has done its thing, Ioane does a great job at recovering this dodgy pass before punishing Australia for being a man down again. Ioane knows he'll need Whitelock to clean the ruck if the Wallabies make the tackle, so goes wide to Talia, with Koroi Betty simply just having too much ground to make up. Koroi Betty only now begins to turn to the outside as Talia takes the pass. His poor tackle position now allows Talia to burn him on the outside before Talia brilliantly delays his pass off to Ioane. If Talia passes on 66-23, Callaway can still track back and potentially tackle Ioane if he's lucky, so Talia instead passes so that Ioane catches on 66-24 1 second later. Because Ioane catches at this time, there are now two unmarked All Blacks completely available to dot the ball down. Roygaard stays there to keep Petaia in a 2-on-1 as Ioane does the honours. After a slight deviation from a pre-planned move, an excellent reading of the space completes what was try of the championship for sure. Now that we're back from our second ad break though, it's important to highlight the second test of the series so that we can see that the All Blacks are indeed human, while we also highlight the improvements in the Wallabies. The team's ruck speed right now is on an immense level that gave the All Blacks a hard time in Dunedin. As we can see on 2:20 into the game, the All Blacks have a structured defensive line inside their 22. 8 of their players are on the open side, making it pretty clear who they're marking, while we can see 7 Wallabies in frame. The blind side though never gets the time to recover and reorganise. As we see Sean Stevenson get up to his feet, Brodie Retallick and Tamaiti Williams head towards the open side, looking to cover the incoming numbers from the Wallabies. The players on this previous ruck though are placing themselves into an attack formation after the shift by Williams. Karevi, Bell, Koroi Betty and Parecki, who's a key decision maker for the team organising the shape, team up with Jordan Petaia to outsmart the All Blacks, but they don't set until McDermott sends the pass. Parecki latches onto Bell's shoulder to suck Retallick and Kanan, but Parecki shifts onto Bell's other shoulder so that Petaia can take the pass. Koroi Betty now looks to wrap around towards the edge before he gets on Stevenson's outside. The 3-on-2 we can see right now is also created by Sam Cane, who on 2:27 swaps defensive spots with Retallick rather than allowing the team to hold their width. Stevenson isn't able to mark the two attackers on his own, and Koroi Betty just narrowly gets the try down. Since I've sung Mark Nawangani-Tawasi's praises for much of the year as well, we do have to appreciate this amazing line break that he gives to Andrew Callaway after beating the tackles of Sam Cane and Ardie Savia. Callaway though never should have been totally unopposed. Finlay Christie, a key decision maker in the All Blacks, runs straight at Nawangani-Tawasi, totally oblivious to the bigger picture. Callaway has been with Nawangani-Tawasi this whole time, having pushed him past Kane, before running through this gap between Whitelock and the tackle alongside McCright, who's coming along as a support ruck clearance option. Despite this situation unfolding, Christie, once he's in frame, is going straight for Nwangani Tawasi without any recognition of Whitelock being offside and unable to tackle Callaway. Callaway takes the pass totally unmarked and Christie is side on, now unable to finish him off, which is not painting a pretty picture for him ahead of Antoine Dupont inevitably doing something very similar. Though Callaway is tackled, McCright's work rate to come and support guarantees the front foot ball. As we get back to a wide shot though, I really want to commend Australia for using the diamond shape of pods here with a flat formation over here. The game plan is though to use those players out wide 2 phases later and allow them to set. By combining Karevi as a distributor with Fa'amau Sealy as a clean-out option, the Wallabies can sell these two as a genuine pod long enough to hold the attention of Taukei'aho and Finau. From such a position, reminiscent of Pareki's at the start of the game, Karevi's able to use this pod he's in to draw attention and take Sean Stevenson out of his position on the wing. Holding himself in this pod before passing the ball on will be forcing Stevenson and Enoa to tackle 2 forwards. Not only will the 2 backs be drawn in to tackle the forwards, but Karevi now has the chance to follow this loop pattern and support Koroibete, who is pushing out with Hooper, who is a single man pod out wide. Because Taukei'aho and Finau get stuck into the tackle and form a ruck with Enoa, Stevenson is left as the only player marking both Karevi and Koroibete, who is looped around, while Mackenzie is on the edge to mark Hooper out of frame. By biting in and taking the bait from the Wallabies, Stevenson has not only forced himself into the position to mark these 2 out wide once again, but once Karevi gets the ball again, he's also given Hooper a free ride over the try line. Mackenzie gets absolutely smashed and Hooper goes over the try line, possibly taking Mackenzie's World Cup hopes with him. A man who will have definitely got himself a flight to France though. That, my guy, is Lester Fainga'a Anuku for sure. He gets very close to scoring here in the second half, and what I admire about this current All Black squad though is that they're often coming up with a plan B inside the opposition half, assuming that every charge forward won't be a try so that they can keep their attempts up. What we've got over here is a bit of a new idea with backs packing in together. Although Tamaiti Williams hasn't taken this pass, Karevi is forced to hold the line right here as Sam Cane comes onto the ball at pace. Cane is already sprinting as Christie releases the ball, meaning the Aussie line can't afford to drift any further to the blind side. Well, even if Cane doesn't take the ball, the All Blacks have a plan C in place. Mackenzie has Jordan on the outside, who is marked by Callaway, a smaller player. Not only is Jordan able to confront Callaway size-wise, but he's also got Dallas McLeod, the replacement 12 on his debut, available for both an inside pass as well as a player who can latch onto him to help him drive over. Even though Stevenson is lurking out of frame, McLeod hanging in tightly with Jordan gives Callaway no choice but to pick between 2 guaranteed try scorers. As Stevenson is on debut, he gets to do the honours. The final try of the Bledisloe Cup series though does worry me a little bit. We've seen the pattern of a forward or midfielder sending the ball out to back to another layer of attacking options work very well thus far, but is it now becoming too common is the question I've got. While Cane takes the ball from Aaron Smith and sends it on to McLeod for his only carry, Mwanga is looking in behind once again. Luckily, the All Blacks resist the temptation to use this move one time too many, and pods start forming. Sami Penny Finau gets between Leota and Slipper, carrying Hooper over the line to score. So am I overthinking how common this formation is starting to become? We'll save that question for next time though, because the biggest question that these 2 teams have answered is that they both have goal kickers calm enough to slot the winning kicks. With Quade Cooper doing it for the Wallabies and Richie Mwanga doing it for the All Blacks, both teams have the personnel to make even more history. So what overall can we take away from this video? As I've tried to tell you guys, the Wallabies are heading in the right direction. I know the results are not telling you that, but this is, I'm going to keep saying it, a far better team than the one that Dave Rennie was in charge of. Richie Mwanga, Fletcher Newell and Offato Ngafasi as well definitely gave Aaron Smith a lot of fire to help off the bench. Those 4 were all crucial in the return of the second test, whereas the first test, an absolute walkover, clinical and well done by the All Blacks. The big thing though for both teams is they need to learn to control a game for the full 80 multiple matches in a row, because that is ultimately how you win a World Cup. Whether these teams win the World Cup, We can't see that just yet, but I guess the proof will be in the pudding, and perhaps these tests have given us some hindsight for the All Blacks if they do manage to get the job done, which I have my fingers crossed about. Though Ireland and France are waiting in the wings, never write off the All Blacks, as they do say. Thank you very much for watching this video, guys, and a big thank you to my patrons over here. You can sign up to the 3 possible tiers if you like, if you can afford and everything like that. This channel is my full-time job, so I do require a bit of support to keep everything trucking over, everything like that. Thank you very much for commenting, liking this video, and subscribing to me as well if you did enjoy it. I really appreciate that as well. I do have an account over on Instagram and an account over on Threads where I share a few thoughts every now and again. I better get away though from this camera, better shut everything down and edit this thing, because man, do we have a lot of work to get done before the World Cup. Thank you very much for coming along to the channel, guys. I really appreciate it. Cheers from Max.